declaring any FBI report incomplete without interviews from Judge Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford. The stance taken as the hours tick down for the FBI to release its report on Judge Kavanaugh and for the Senate Majority Leader to trigger a vote on the president's Supreme Court nominee. As senators await the crucial next steps, the heated debate over the nomination has gone from a search for the truth to a debate over the tone which the president is taking. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is following it all from the North Lawn. Good evening, John.
Shannon, good evening to you. Democrats are upping the pressure for the FBI to interview Judge Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford. Senator Dianne Feinstein saying that no investigation would be credible without those interviews, and Ford's attorneys sending a message to Senator Charles Grassley that he will only get the information he's looking for regarding Christine Blasey Ford's counseling sessions and polygraph test if she hands them directly to the FBI. All of this as three key Republican senators appear none too happy with President Trump. At a campaign rally in northern Mississippi last night, President Trump wound up his base, unloading on Judge Kavanaugh's accuser, Christine Blasey Ford.
I had one beer. Well, do you think it was? Nope, it was one beer. Oh, good. How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know.
The rally crowd threw its full-throated support behind the president. But in Washington, the three Republican senators crucial to Kavanaugh's confirmation condemned the president's remarks.
I don't approve of the comments from last night. I thought that they were wrong and extraordinarily unfortunate.
I wish he hadn't have done it. I just can say it's kind of appalling.
The president's comments were just plain wrong.
At the White House briefing today, the press secretary said President Trump was just being honest. Why did the president say what he did last night in the way that he said it?
The president was stating the facts. Every single word Judge Kavanaugh has said has been picked apart. Yet if anybody says anything about the accusations that have been thrown against them, that's totally off limits and outrageous.
At last night's rally, President Trump complained the process has been completely unfair to Judge Kavanaugh.
A man's life is in tatters. A man's life is shattered. His wife is shattered. His daughters, who are beautiful, incredible young kids, they destroy people. They want to destroy people. These are really evil people.
I would never do to them what you've done to this guy.
But even the Republican senator who forcefully made that same point in last Thursday's hearing says the president went too far.
President Trump went through a factual rendition that I didn't particularly like, and I would tell him, knock it off. You're not helping.
As the supplemental FBI investigation of Judge Kavanaugh nears its end, Fox News has learned that there has been no request from the White House for the FBI to interview either Judge Kavanaugh or Christine Blasey Ford. Ford's attorneys are outraged, but one of those key Republican senators indicated he's okay with that.
I'm not troubled by that as much as if we came back and found out that the FBI only followed a couple of leads or interviewed just a couple of people.
Sources tell Fox News there are some circumstances in which Judge Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford could be interviewed. For example, if the FBI develops some contradictory information in its interviews with other people, or if a Republican senator were to insist that the interviews happen. But so far, Shannon, none have asked.
All right, John, we know just moments ago we found out that Senate Democrats on the Judiciary Committee are suggesting something about past background checks of Judge Kavanaugh. They say there could be evidence of inappropriate behavior. At least they're questioning something the chairman's had to say. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this is something that's just broken in the last few minutes. All 10 Democrats sent a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Charles Grassley suggesting a tweet that he sent out about Judge Kavanaugh is inaccurate. That tweet said, quote, "Nowhere in any of these 6 FBI reports, the previous FBI reports on Judge Kavanaugh, which the committee has reviewed on a bipartisan basis, was there ever a whiff of any issue at all related in any way to inappropriate sexual behavior or alcohol abuse." These 10 Democrats are now saying that based on what they know about these previous 6 FBI investigations, that statement is not true. They're not saying what part of it is not true, but they are asking Senator Grassley to have a full briefing with them about the new supplemental FBI investigation before going public with any of the information, or before a vote, certainly in the Senate. We'll see what happens.
All right, we will. John, thank you very much. The tension on Capitol Hill is palpable as senators await the FBI report. It could be released any moment. And the Senate Majority Leader prepares to set a confirmation vote on Judge Kavanaugh in motion. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel's tracking it all on Capitol Hill.
Security is tight and tension is rising as the Senate prepares to start the clock on Judge Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation process.
The FBI is finishing up a supplemental background investigation. It will soon add this information to Judge Kavanaugh's file for senators' consideration.
The simmering tension between McConnell and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer has reached a full boil.
It is classic diversionary, blame the other person tactics when he himself is the master of delay.
With the FBI background report expected to be finished any time, sources tell Fox News the GOP leadership plans a tight lid on its access, with only a single copy to be available on request to senators and secured in a combination safe. Senators are looking at a 4-day effort ahead. Day 1, McConnell files cloture to start the clock. Day 2 is a layover day. Day 3, procedural vote on whether to end debate. And Day 4, the Senate votes on confirmation. Patience among decided Republicans is running thin.
It's time for the senators to be senators, for women to women up, men to man up, and let's vote.
Despite the partisan posturing, both sides acknowledge this drama comes down to a handful of undecided senators.
Well, I'm looking at the gentleman as an adult. I'm looking a little bit of everything. I'm trying to put the human side to it.
Everyone has asked, what's it going to say? How am I going to react? I have no idea.
Even before they get to see the report, Democrats are already ripping the FBI.
I don't think they're doing the thorough investigation that we had hoped and that they promised, and they're not doing the thorough investigation that even President Trump said so, that he called for.
And there's no let up in the bipartisan bickering over Judge Kavanaugh's public testimony last Thursday.
And I'm concerned, frankly more concerned right at this moment about judicial temperament, frankly, the worthiness of this candidate or any other candidate to serve on a court of this importance.
I thought Kavanaugh was treated like crap. Yeah, well, boo yourself.
In Congress, pressure tends to force action. Shortly after the FBI report arrives, Majority Leader McConnell is expected to start the clock, and then it will be time for the undecideds on Kavanaugh to get off the fence. Shannon?
All right, Mike Emanuel on Capitol Hill, and we want to follow up on something from the Senate Judiciary Committee, the back and forth we had with John Roberts about Democrats saying that the Judiciary Committee had inappropriately tweeted something regarding Judge Kavanaugh. Well, this is what Senate Judiciary is now saying. They tweet, nothing in the tweet is inaccurate or misleading. The committee stands by its statement, which is completely truthful, more baseless innuendo and more false smears from Senate Democrats. The Republicans on the committee had said nothing in FBI background checks found any inappropriate behavior by Judge Kavanaugh. The Democrats said that's not true. Back to the Republicans who say it is. We'll watch it. Meantime, the midterm elections are just about a month away, and Senate races across the country are going to be tight. We've got brand new Fox News polls that show several Senate races are far from settled. In North Dakota, Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp is the most vulnerable incumbent as her opponent, Kevin Cramer, now leads by 12 points. In Tennessee, Republican Marsha Blackburn is ahead of Phil Bredesen by 5 points, while over in Missouri, the race between Senator Claire McCaskill and Republican Josh Hawley is now tied up. In Arizona, though, Democrat Kyrsten Sinema tops Republican challenger Martha McSally by a 47 to 45% margin. And finally, in the three-way bid for Senate in Indiana, Democratic incumbent Joe Donnelly tops Republican challenger Mike Braun by just 2 points. The ongoing fight in Washington over the president's Supreme Court pick could have some real effects across the country this November, as it fires up voters who either want to see Judge Kavanaugh confirmed or denied. Correspondent Peter Ducey reports on one of those key races from Burlington, Wisconsin.
In 2016, Republican candidates repeatedly called to build the wall.
Let's get the confirmation process done.
In 2018, they're calling to confirm Kavanaugh.
Look what they have done to Judge Kavanaugh. I don't know about you, but I am ready to have Judge Kavanaugh be the next justice on our United States Supreme Court.
Wisconsin's Republican Senate candidate Leah Vukmir doesn't think voters are just watching the Kavanaugh developments. She thinks they're acting on them.
People are energized. They want it. I'm hearing it on the phones as I talk to people as well.
Vukmir wants to unseat one-term incumbent Senator Tammy Baldwin, who is a no on Kavanaugh, in part because, quote, I cannot support a nominee for a lifetime appointment who would turn back the clock on a woman's constitutional right and freedom to make her own health care choices, including access to birth control. But Senator Baldwin staked out that position on July 12th, and Republican women in Wisconsin think the way more recent hearings played out changes things.
I would have voted anyway, but it does motivate me to sort of touch out to other people and say, you got to get out and vote.
It's tearing me apart that we've basically become, like a civil war, basically, only, it's Dems and Republicans.
I don't think it's being treated fairly, and definitely I'm going to be going to the ballot with that in mind.
The former White House Chief of Staff and RNC Chair Reince Priebus believes something is brewing.
I think the base sees this a fight over our conservative values and whether or not they want to sit back and just watch a man's life get destroyed through politics.
Ultimately, it won't matter unless people paying attention now actually vote.
I think it is going to increase our turnout.
In 2016, there were plenty of Republicans who voted for President Trump just because of his promise to put conservatives on the Supreme Court. 2 years later, Republican challengers like Leah Vukmir are hoping that strong feelings stirred by the actual process of putting a conservative on the court help them unseat Democrats. Shannon?
Peter Ducey, thank you. The Dow jumped 54 to finish at another record high, the 15th of the year. The S&P 500 rose 2. NASDAQ finished ahead 26. The U.S. is withdrawing from 2 international agreements and examining others as tensions between the U.S. and Iran escalate over reimposed sanctions, threats in Iraq, and a United Nations court ruling. State Department correspondent Rich Edson has details.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo blames Iran for attacks on U.S. diplomatic facilities in Iraq.
Our intelligence in this regard is solid. We can see the hand of the Ayatollah and his henchmen supporting these attacks on the United States.
The secretary also announced the administration is terminating the 1955 Treaty of Amity between the United States and Iran. Iran used that treaty to justify its suit against U.S. sanctions in the International Court of Justice. In response, Iran's foreign minister threw one of President Trump's favorite attack lines back at him, calling the U.S. an outlaw regime. This morning, the ICJ ruled the U.S. must suspend some of those sanctions against Iran, like those that may affect humanitarian goods and airplane safety. Hours later, the White House announced the U.S. is withdrawing from another treaty Palestinians have used to sue the U.S. for moving its Israeli embassy to Jerusalem.
We will commence a review of all international agreements that may still expose the United States to purported binding jurisdiction. The United States will not sit idly by as baseless, politicized claims are brought against us.
The administration is also preparing for Secretary Pompeo's trip Sunday to North Korea, where he's scheduled to meet again with Kim Jong-un. North Korea is pushing for sanctions relief, saying the Kim regime must make progress towards dismantling its weapons. Pompeo rejected that appeal.
The economic sanctions continue to remain in place. The core proposition, the thing which will give us the capacity to deliver denuclearization, isn't changing.
This will be the secretary's 4th trip to Pyongyang. That 4th trip was scheduled to have already happened, though the president canceled it a few weeks ago, citing a lack of progress from North Korea on dismantling those weapons. Shannon?
Rich Hudson at the State Department. Thank you, Rich. This is a Fox News alert. 5 South Carolina law enforcement officers have been shot, we're told, in Florence County. News outlets reporting Sheriff's Deputy Chief Glenn Kirby says 3 Florence County Sheriff's deputies and 2 city officers have been shot. Information on their conditions is not immediately available. A Twitter post from Florence County Emergency Management says that due to a high priority call in Florence, there is an active shooter incident in progress at this time. We are advising everyone to stay away from the area. We'll follow the story, bring you more as soon as we get it. Up next, a former sailor linked to suspicious mail addressed to the president. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 5 in San Diego, where the U.S. Coast Guard offloaded more than 22,000 pounds of cocaine today. The drugs were seized from 8 suspected smuggling vessels off the coasts of Mexico, Central and South America. Fox 29 in Philadelphia, where there's word that Toys R Us could be making a comeback. A group of investors said this week it will work with potential partners to develop new ideas for stores in the U.S. and around the world, which could bring back the iconic brand in a reimagined way. And this is a live look at New York from Fox 5. The big story there and around the U.S. is the sound of 225 million electronic devices that went off today at 2:18 p.m. Eastern Time. The buzz was part of an emergency presidential alert test by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. That is tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back. Former Navy sailors being linked to mail addressed to the president and other top administration officials that initially tested positive for the deadly poison ricin. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin joins us live from the Pentagon with what pointed investigators to this sailor. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Shannon. U.S. officials have now determined the packages sent to President Trump, Defense Secretary Mattis, and others did not contain ricin. Pentagon spokesperson Dana White issued the following statement, quote, according to our preliminary analysis, the substance was castor seeds from which ricin is derived. The FBI is still investigating. The two envelopes found in the Pentagon mailroom initially tested positive for the banned lethal agent and appear to be a crude attempt to harm the president, defense secretary, and others. They were sent to FBI laboratories Monday. U.S. officials tell me based on the return address on one of the envelopes, authorities suspect a former U.S. Navy sailor is responsible for sending the envelopes, including one to Senator Ted Cruz's Texas office. The Centers for Disease Control says it would take a significant amount of ricin to kill someone. Late yesterday, the Pentagon took reporters to see the mail facility where the letters were found. The photos you see here are actually what employees in the Pentagon's mailroom wear every day. One package was addressed to Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, the other to the Navy's top officer, Admiral John Richardson. It's the first package scare since March, when a Seattle man was arrested for sending packages containing explosive materials to the Pentagon and other government facilities, including the CIA. Shannon?
Jennifer Griffin live at the Pentagon. Thank you. Closing arguments in the murder trial of a Chicago police officer charged in the shooting of a black teenager are scheduled to begin Thursday. The defense officially rested today following Officer Jason Van Dyke's own testimony Tuesday about what he says happened the night he shot Laquan McDonald 16 times. Testimony that was at odds with what is shown on dashcam video. The fallout continues today over a New York Times article that claims President Trump participated in tax schemes to build his wealth. The president today calling the story a hit piece. Tonight, correspondent David Lee Miller takes a look at the report.
Despite cultivating an image as a self-made billionaire, the New York Times in a front-page story says President Trump acquired much of his fortune thanks to gifts and inheritance from his wealthy father, and along the way used possibly illegal ways to avoid paying taxes. The report says, quote, the Times investigation, based on a vast trove of confidential tax returns and financial records, reveals that Mr. Trump received the equivalent today of at least $413 million from his father's real estate empire, starting when he was a toddler and continuing to this day. New York Times reporter David Barstow says the family did whatever they could to avoid paying tax.
Some of the techniques that they used were standard tax avoidance, which is perfectly legal. But we also found a series of strategies that they used that, according to the tax experts that we spoke with, were actually improper, clearly illegal.
In a tweet, the president responded, ridiculing the paper's inflation-adjusted math. Quote, the failing New York Times did something I have never seen done before. They used the concept of time value of money in doing a very old, boring, and often told hit piece on me. Added up, this means that 97% of stories on me are bad, never recovered from bad election call. The president's spokeswoman called the Times report fake news.
The president's lawyer addressed some of the specific claims and walked through how the allegations of fraud and tax evasion are 100% false and highly defamatory. There was no fraud or tax evasion by anyone.
Following the article's publication, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said the city will work with the state to look into any back taxes owed by Mr. Trump, and will do so with vigor. Shannon?
David Lee Miller in New York, thank you. Up next, House Senator McConnell's having a moment over Supreme Court nominees. First, beyond our borders tonight, Syrian President Bashar Assad says his country has reached a major understanding with Arab states after years of hostility over the country's civil war. Assad made the statement to a small Kuwaiti newspaper, telling its publisher that the Syrian civil war will soon be over. Assad doesn't name the countries, but says Arab and Western delegations have begun visiting Syria to prepare for the reopening of diplomatic and other missions. Russian President Vladimir Putin has called the ex-spy who was poisoned with a military-grade nerve agent in Britain a traitor and a, quote, scumbag. It was the first time that Putin directly condemned Sergei Skripal, who was poisoned along with his daughter back in March. Britain put the blame on Russia, but Putin has denied the country had any role in it. The British Prime Minister has told her Conservative Party to abandon dreams of a perfect Brexit and back her as divorce negotiations with the European Union enter their final phase. Theresa May said today not having a Brexit deal would be a bad plan for the UK and the European Union. Britain is set to part from the EU in just 6 months. To some of the stories we're looking at beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back.